Everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and welcome to episode 6, If I Could Build One Case. And we're going to do a quick recap of where we are to date. First episode, Cleveland Quartet, my father-in-law's favorites. Episode 2, Artistic Beauties, depicting cards that just have beautiful artistic value to me. Just enjoy looking at them. Episode 3 was my father's favorites, Mantle, K-Line, and Bobby Orr. Episode 4 were players that I admire for achieving greatness through adversity, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, Roger Maris. Episode 5 was Defensive Giants, Czech Bednarik, Dick Butkus, Mean Joe Green. Just 3 great defensive players, again, that I just admire and love to show off in my collection. And then for this episode, episode 6, is just titled Icons. And the word icon is, I think, a very overused word. It's kind of like irony. We use it to describe things that are not really ironic or not really iconic. I find myself doing it quite a bit myself. But iconic really is something that really represents that sport, that era. It's a symbol or a person that's synonymous, or an event that's synonymous with the sport or era or whatever it is that it's trying to represent. So these are, in this case, 7 players that I think meet that term iconic. And there's, of course, many others, and there's some in this case that I would consider iconic players too. But this is what I labeled this one because these guys were clearly iconic players for their time. First here, I paired these two together. Mickey Mantle is the only person that's in the case twice, and the only one that will be in the case twice. But I thought this card, I don't have many dual player cards. I don't know if I have any other ones than this one. But this is one that I had to get because I just, have a lot of admiration. I'm big time fans of both of these guys. I've probably read more books about these two than I have of any other player, or maybe even person for that matter. And I'm a big fan of history, but Mays and Mantle are just two guys that really, they were the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning of the 1950s and 60s. Baseball was the marquee sport in America. That was changing around this time with the rise of the AFL and NFL football. But baseball still at this moment was the marquee sport. And I would argue these two might be the last 2 players that were truly iconic of all the sports for baseball. I don't know if a baseball player will be representative of all sports again, just like Mantle and Mays were at that time. So I just think that these two together have to be, in this case, represented in this manner. And behind them, you can see in this picture is Hank Aaron. There's Johnny Roseboro, I believe, for the Dodgers. He was number 8. So it's kind of cool that you got a couple other good players. So this was taken, I believe, at one of the 61 All-Star games, because I believe they played 2 All-Star games back then. So that being said, just going to talk real quick about these guys. There's always these great comparisons between the two. I'm a Mantle fan. I'm a Mays fan as well, but I'm a Yankee fan, so of course I favor Mantle slightly as a fan, but I'm also unbiased enough to look at them from the number standpoint. So, Mays, of course, wins home runs, hits, runs, RBIs, WAR, so all those indicators, he was clearly higher than Mantle in all those numbers. He also played 500 more games, but what's interesting is Mantle was a more feared hitter. I still truly believe that. He walked more times. He had 270 more walks than Mays did. And again, he played 500 less games. He had a 421 on-base percentage. Mays had a 384 on-base percentage. Mantle had a higher slugging percentage at 577 to Mays' 557. But again, Mays beat him in a lot of the other traditional categories. He also had 12 gold gloves to Mantle's 1 gold glove. Mantle had the 7 World Series to Mays' 1 World Series, and Mantle had 3 MVPs to Mays' 2 MVPs. Now, I do think Mantle's fielding is very underappreciated. He was definitely an above-average outfielder. Just ask Don Larson in that perfect game. He made a phenomenal catch in that game that a lot of people forget, that saved that perfect game for Don Larson in 1956, and that catch is on YouTube. I'll attach it on the bottom here, the video of that catch. Not as spectacular as Mays, but you can see the speed that Mantle had to catch up to the ball. So he's, I think, underappreciated as a as a outfielder, and I think he's also somewhat underappreciated as a base runner as well. He was a great, he had a high steal percentage. He just wasn't asked to steal a lot on those Yankees teams. His run to first base, as a lot of people know, was just so quick, especially on the left side when he would do his drag bunt. He was just a great speedster down the line, even after the knee injuries. So, so from that standpoint, he had a great run to first base. Mays was a spectacular runner as well, and I don't think Mays gets a lot of credit for his acumen as a player. He was a smart player, and I think his fielding is as much given to his intelligence and his baseball acumen as it is to his ability to get to the ball. You'd hear accounts of players that played in the outfield with him of telling him to move here, move there, and the ball would get hit right to where that guy was standing, because just Mays just had a great feel for the game, great intelligence for the game, and I don't think that's always appreciated enough about Willie Mays. Where I think Mantle, of course, has the big edge over Mays is the playoffs, and I've said in the one video when I did for Lou Rock, there was no comparison as Mantle as a playoff performer to Mays. He dominated the World Series. And the Yankees had great teams, and I would always argue the Giants had great teams. He had Willie McCovey around him, who protected Mays in that lineup. So, so I think it's a good debate. I think it depends on what you're looking for and who you're a fan of. But both were great players. And then there's also those intangibles that are a little harder to argue. Certainly, Mantle was beloved by his teammates and anybody who plays sports. I played sports, and when you see your best player playing hurt and things like that, if you say it doesn't motivate you, then I don't know what does motivate you. And Mantle was a great motivator in that way. So that's that part. Next up is Sandy Koufax, and just again another iconic, great player for that time. And he definitely was iconic. He brought so many fans to the Dodgers during that era. In that 6-year time frame from 61 to 66, I mean, he won 3 Cy Youngs, an MVP, 2 World Series MVPs, 2 World Series, 5 ERA titles, 3 strikeout crowns. He was a 3-time Triple Crown winner. He won 25 games or more 3 times during that span. What more can you say about this guy? Beautiful 63 Topps card here. And just a great image of him, my favorite card of him by far. So I had to get this one in because it captures him when he was at his peak during that era of that great performance. That's why I really like this card, because I just see the Los Angeles emblazoned on his chest. Just a great image of him. And now we move over to football. You got this guy here, Johnny Unitas. He was a 3-time MVP. He is the guy that catapulted football to the national spotlight in what they always call the greatest game ever played. I don't know if it was the greatest game ever played, but it certainly was one of the most important games ever played in 1958 between the Giants and the Colts, when Unitas led the Colts down the field into victory with the Don Amici touchdown. So he was football in that era. And if you don't believe me, in 1959, he was the #1 card in the top set, and he was also in 60, 61, 62, and 63. Prior to Topps losing the contract for the NFL to Philadelphia. So he was the most relevant player of football in that time. You got the crew cut here. This is the 2nd-year card I have as rookie, but I like this one because this is 58. This is the year that he, again, catapulted the NFL into higher standing within our pop culture. And then here you got Joe Namath. I always say the transition from the black shoes, Johnny Unitas, to Joe Namath, white shoes. Namath is definitely an icon of the 60s. Didn't have a super long productive career, but he was a great player. He had first NFL passer to throw for 4,000 yards. His numbers don't look good today, but the game is a lot different today than it was then. Joe Namath was a huge deal at the time. I used the 68 card here. I don't have his rookie, but I have every other one of his cards, his base Topps cards. And this one here, though, is the year that he won the Super Bowl. Even though I know it was played in 69, it was the 68 season when he made the prediction that said the Jets were going to win this game over the highly favored Colts. He is one of the big reasons why the NFL and AFL ended up merging, was that game. So I just wanted to bring him up as well. And then over here you got none other than Mr. Hockey. When you're called Mr. Hockey, you're an icon. So he was the guy that was the most popular player in hockey, certainly from the 40s into the 60s. I have his 57 Topps card, which I show a lot in my hockey case build, but this is my favorite card of him because I love this blue background with the great-looking red jersey, and then you got the nice yellow lettering, or yellow border underneath with the black and red lettering. Just a great image of Gordie Howe, and I just think this really captures who he was more so than my 57 Topps card. So I included this one in the case, and to tell you how revered Gordie Howe was, Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, and Bobby Hull all said he was the best player ever, and they idolized him. So whether that's true or not doesn't really matter, but when you have three greats like that I believe say it with all sincerity, that tells you the kind of player Gordie Howe was. The guy could do it all. And then this guy needs no introduction. He really was professional hockey. When I was growing up, was Wayne Gretzky. He put up video game type numbers at a time where there was high scoring in the NHL, but nobody was putting up the numbers he was until Lemieux came along. And Lemieux was another freakish talent like Gretzky. Talk about hockey acumen. This guy had it in spades. He was just an outstanding anticipator of what was going to happen on the ice next. He could score goals. He could, pass unlike any other player. I mean, again, the only knock on him is I don't know if he was really a complete player, but does it really matter when you are so great at all these other things that mattered most, like scoring goals and playmaking and putting the puck in the net in an era when that was being done probably at a higher rate than any other time in NHL history. So Gretzky was the right player at the right time. So I want to cut this video here. These are the 6 cards that represent that period, 7 players that I consider the icons that I wanted to represent in this case. And this is, again, in my collecting sweet spot in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s some. And I was happy to share these with you. And we can see here where the case is at.